Everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to DingoTalk, where we explore the experiences that make us who we are. Here's your host, Carlo Guadagnino.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is DingoTalk. My guest this week is the head football coach at Rowan University, first-year head football coach, Pat Ruley. But before we get into Coach Ruley's story, let's talk about Rowan University. Rowan is located in Glassboro, New Jersey. It's got about 23,000 students. Cost before aid is $24,000. Cost after aid is $21,000. The acceptance rate is 77%. The grad rate is 66%. The top three majors are psychology, biology, and business admin. Again, like I said, this is Coach Ruley's first year at the helm of his alma mater. He's going to tell us about that journey and how he got there. For those of you that are watching this that are maybe looking to go to college, play football or not, Rowan is what you're looking for. You want to make sure you talk to your guidance counselor, the coach, or whoever is talking to you about Rowan. Go on the website, www.rowan.edu. Again, that's www.rowan.edu. And make sure that'll get you all the information that you need from cost, a little bit more about the school. But without further ado, this is Coach Ruley. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is Dingo Talk. My guest this week is the new head football coach at Rowan University, Coach Pat Ruley. Coach, first off, congratulations. Second, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Excited to be here.
So, Coach, we're going to do this the same way we do every week. I'm going to throw you back to 2009, and we're going to work our way to today. So my question for you is, how do you find yourself at Rowan the first time as a student?
Yeah, so it wasn't a traditional path for me. I, out of high school, graduated from Atlantic City High School in 2006. So you see there's some gap there, right, in my career. I originally went to Ohio University and was there for a full calendar year. I'm the oldest of six kids. Some stuff happened in the spring semester back home that kind of brought me back to New Jersey. And I didn't really want to be home, though, in terms of, like trying to find that next step, kind of where I'm from. A lot of people kind of get sucked into staying there and never leaving. I love it as a place to grow up and a place to visit. But in terms of, the casinos and, the nightlife and all that, it's really easy to get kind of like really, sucked into that easy money, a lot of cash type businesses where you can make a lot of money as a 19, 20-year-old, but, then all of a sudden you wake up and you're 45 and it's like, man, like I'm still doing that. Right. And to the people who are doing that, like, more power to you. I knew that wasn't the thing that I wanted to do, for my life. And I ended up moving down to Maryland for a full year. I was living in right outside of Annapolis in Severna Park.
Okay.
And just went to like community. My uncle lived down there and went to community college there for a year. Still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, really. And then the next fall, I actually took the semester off and didn't really know. Again, like I was kind of still on the fence about, do I want to go back and play football still? Didn't really know what the next step was. And then I had some buddies that I kind of grew up with that I played with and against, and they were at Rowan. And I came up midway through their fall semester just to visit. It kind of piqued my interest. And then I enrolled that spring semester, as a spring student, and kind of the rest was history.
Now, Coach, can you explain that process for maybe people that don't understand? So when you enroll as a spring semester student, and now you've talked to the football team, and do you go right into spring ball with them, and that's your first real taste of Rowan football?
So it was really winter workouts. So like all the running, the mat drills, like the winter type stuff, the lifts, that was kind of my introduction. And then, it was back then spring ball, at this level was hardly spring ball. It was, barely a ball at all. It was really just spring conditioning in a lot of regard. So I got that ability to go there during spring. The NJAC at the time had a 100-man roster limit. And I was obviously somebody that they weren't like kind of counting on necessarily in the recruiting process. And, we were a very good football team like during those years and the years preceding when I was there. And, obviously at that point, you really don't even know what you're getting out of a guy that there's very limited evaluation ability in that old school spring football model. So I was lucky enough to, have them say, hey, like you're coming to camp. And then, got on kick game as a freshman, saw some time because we were blowing people out, started as a sophomore, and then kind of took off from there.
And for those of you that don't know, Coach is being a little modest. He's a two-time All-NJAC, 2012 All-American, 2012 National Bowl appearance, and a 2010 NJAC champion. So, as you said, there was a lot of success with the program. So when you get through your time there, when do you decide coaching is where you're going?
So I was kind of fortunate enough leading into my senior year of playing. There was a guy at the time who was the defensive coordinator at Villanova. His name is Mark Reardon. Mm-hmm. He lived kind of in the same community as me. My youngest sister and his daughter were in like class together. And I just happened to like either be picking her up one day or we were at the beach and I knew who he was. And I just said like, hey, like I'd love to catch up with you sometime and really just pick your brain about the whole college coaching thing and all that. And he's like, oh man, like you want to do that? Like you're making that worst decision, like whatever the joke is that old guys make about like getting into the profession. And so he's like, all right, well, listen, like get through your senior season, make the most of it, see what happens. And then if you still want to do it, like we'll talk. And so sure enough, that happens. It's kind of like slow. There's really nothing going. And then it's like July 26th and I'm working at my family's sub shop in South Jersey. And he calls me and he's like, hey, my buddy is the defensive coordinator down at Towson. They're looking for like a defensive quality control coach. There's no housing. There's no meals, like nothing, like no pay.
Right.
Like they've had like 100 people apply for the job, but he reached out to me if I had any like GAs or players graduating that wanted to get into it. I told him about you. Can you be in Baltimore tomorrow for an interview? So, and I was working like a dog at that time. I was on the beach patrol during the day. I worked in nightlife in the clubs and the casinos in Atlantic City. And then I also worked for my family's business. So I was stacking a pretty good amount of money. And I was like, I might be able to make this work. And so I go down to the interview. It was cool. Like just kind of obviously as an entry level coach, they're kind of just like gauging my hunger, maybe a little bit of knowledge from like, hey, tell us about what you ran in college, right? Just that type of deal. And I wasn't even back home from the interview. And Matt Hackman calls me, the defensive coordinator. He's like, hey, like, we'd love to offer you the job. Are you interested? And I was like, I'm very interested. He's like, all right. And it was like July 28th. And he's like, all right, well, you got to be here on August 1st. And I'm like, all right. So I go
pack
home,
the car up and right down the road we're going to go.
Yeah. And so, Johnny Unitas Stadium, we called it Johnny Unitas Suites because the film room is where I live, literally 2 computer chairs, up against each other, feet up. Did my laundry in the equipment room, showered in the locker room, and did that for 4 months. And lucky enough to be a part of a program, literally year one out of the gate, have an opportunity to go to a national championship game, beat some very good players on the road. I beat Jimmy G at his place in the quarterfinals at Eastern Illinois, beat Cooper Kupp at Eastern Washington in the semifinals in Oregon, play against a stacked North Dakota State team in the national championship game. Right. And I even at the time, definitely knew like I could step back and I had enough perspective. And I take a lot of pride of this even to this day, like knowing it's a good moment, like when you're in it type thing, like not having to look back and be like, man, that time was awesome. Like, and I was able to step back in like pre-game, like on the field in the national championship game. And I'm like, man, some people do this for like 40 years and don't even like make the playoffs. And I'm sitting here in like the national championship game, like 4 months into my coaching career.
Right.
And I was hooked. I mean, it was an amazing season, tremendous staff, guys I'm still friends with to this day, and a tremendous roster, but definitely hooked me from day one.
So then from Towson, how do you find yourself to Muhlenberg?
So playing the national championship on like January 7th, I actually, like, maybe a full business week later, I was interviewing for, a job at Muhlenberg. The defensive coordinator at Towson worked at Lafayette for a pretty good amount of time. That's in that area. He knew the head coach at Muhlenberg very well. Again, kind of similar phone call, like reached out to me like, hey, listen, there's an opening at Muhlenberg. The head coach there, I've known for a long time. He's an awesome coach, very well respected. Would it be something you're interested in? And at that time, I'm like, shoot, I'm living in a film room right now. Like, I just want to,
Right.
I want to get my own room. I want to make any money. I want to make $1, like I want to make anything and cut my teeth in it, and I didn't know Muhlenberg from, anybody. I had no idea, and that was the best decision I ever made probably in my career. I mean, the guy that I worked for there, Mike Donnelly, who's no longer with us, was my mentor, taught me so many things that, are paramount to my fabric and DNA as a coach, even to this day, schematically, but also just, how to interact with players and, what that looked like. And, that was a tremendous gift, being around him for 2.5 years and kind of being his right-hand man, because how the staff structure worked. He had his other two full-time guys in the program were on offense. So like I was truly like the only other guy with him defensively all day long, every day,
Right.
So what a privilege, just organically gain so much knowledge and information, from a guy who'd been in it for 40 years and been super successful, and was also like an amazing guy, and so that definitely shaped me a ton. And yeah, I was there for, 2.5 years and had a bunch of success as a program.
And then you come down here to West Virginia. You find yourself at AB.
I do.
And how does that? Because that was a young program, right?
It was. So I was there when the guys that were like the JV or startup guys, whatever you call those guys, I was there for their 5th year, right? So I was there for like the culmination of like that first recruiting class, making it all the way through. And it showed. I mean, we had tremendous players. We were the number 2 defense, like in the all of Division II football that year. We beat Robert Morris at their place to open the season.
Not easy.
And yeah, I mean, just played tremendous. Won the GMAC championship, the inaugural GMAC. And again, learned a ton from different people there. And to be honest, that was the first moment in my coaching career where I got to reflect on the gift that this profession gives you, in terms of like, if you take a job somewhere that you may never have even visited or considered even, driving through,
Right.
and you have the ability to really embed yourself in a community way different than one that I grew up in. Like I grew up, a half a mile from the Atlantic Ocean. And now I'm in like the sticks in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And
way up on the hill, right? There's
it
sits up on the hill, and then there's, I believe, a sheets or something at the bottom of the hill. But
there is. And that's it. I mean, there's one stoplight. Like, I mean, they know you by the car you're driving when you're coming through town. I mean, it is small, but it really allowed me to gain perspective on like how, other people in this country live. And, again, just kind of, that's always something I've been really grateful for, is the experiences that I've had. I went to Atlantic City High School where 85% of the student body didn't look like me, right? So my ability to have that experience as a high school kid, then go out to West Virginia where, a lot of that population is impoverished and a different type of hopeless in some ways, in terms of like, yeah, they're they're poor or they're impoverished, but it's way different because there is no industry. There is no,
Right.
So it's a way different feeling, and being able to have conversations with those people and talk to them about like their story and how they got there, or if they're like third generation from that area, and but just be able to gain those types of insights to like be very grateful and fortunate for what you do have, even when you are sleeping in a film room, not making any money, or like at Muhlenberg making $5,000 a year. I thought I was like the richest man on earth after just doing what I had done, but in all seriousness, like, and then you go to a place where like, there's people that I was choosing to take that grind, right? Like I could have, I was an English major in college. I had opportunities working for publishing companies and in PR firms and all that. Mm-hmm. I chose to take this route of making no money and kind of cutting my teeth that way, and that's not the case for everybody, especially in places that like AB and like Philippi, West Virginia that I mentioned, and being grateful for the things that you do have. And right. those people put that type of stuff in perspective for you for sure.
And then after that year, we get to your last stop before when we come home to Rowan. Yep. How do you find yourself leaving West Virginia and going to Pennsylvania up there to Susquehanna?
Yeah. So I remember that first recruiting cycle when I was at Susquehanna, and I'd be recruiting guys from like the DMV or back home in Jersey, and they weren't familiar with Susquehanna. And they'd be like, what's Susquehanna like? Is it like big? And I go, well, that's all relative. Compared to where I just was, it's like New York City. But, that being said, it is still a small, quaint town in central Pennsylvania. But no, so me and the head coach, Tom Perkovich, we had crossed over for 1 year at Muhlenberg. He was the offensive coordinator there when I was there my first year, and it was his last year at Muhlenberg. Okay. He then got the head job at Susquehanna. He was there for 2 seasons, right? My second year at Muhlenberg and my year at AB. Mm-hmm. He was there with another defensive coordinator. That defensive coordinator moved on, and then he called me up, and I had the opportunity to interview for that job because he knew my roots. He knew that he had a ton of respect for, Mike Donnelly and everything that he had done defensively. And he knew that I was a, direct descendant of his tree and his philosophy. And yeah, I got the opportunity to call defense for the first time there, and, all the credit to him in the world. And it's something that now as a first-time head coach, I'm really trying to mimic is trust is earned. But at the end of the day, like giving a guy, a first-time coordinator, pretty much like full autonomy to just be like, hey, like do what you want to do. I trust that you're going to, and to his credit, he did. And, it worked out, and we got to build something special together for the last 7 years, 6 seasons. And I'm extremely grateful for my time there. I learned a ton, awesome people, great players, great families, great administration, great place to be. And, and it was a tremendous ride, but, that when this popped up, it was definitely something that, just was never going to be able to turn down if I had the opportunity to take it. So,
right. So before we jump into you becoming the head coach, I want to talk a little bit about last year, 2023, put it in perspective defensively. You guys as a defense gave up 14 points a game, didn't allow any average. The average was under 100 for rushing yards, was under 150 for passing yards, was under 250 total. And the number that stuck out to me really, when you look at what that defense did last year, is the 28% conversion rate for opposing teams on third downs. Yeah. Now, is that the mentality that's coming now to Rowan? Is that it's going to be that blue collar, hard nose, smack people in the mouth defense? Because that's when I read those stats and watching the games last year, that's kind of what Susquehanna's defense was. It was, we're going to beat you in the trenches and we're going to beat you on the outside. So,
yeah, we talk about, it's the messaging still the same. We talk about runners and strikers, right? We're gonna recruit guys that run well for their position. And at the point of attack, they want the smoke, they want the action. Those are the type of guys we recruit, and so in some other schemes that are more traditional than ours, there might be a guy that doesn't necessarily fit a prototype positionally. Mm-hmm. I was telling somebody the other day that we lean on tweeners. Like, I love tweeners because, they fit exactly what we're looking for. We're moving every single snap, right? We're firing off the football. We're playing a very aggressive style. And that third down number, that you talked about, the biggest emphasis of that is us being really efficient on first down, right? That seems simple, but our guys emphasizing, hey, if they want to run the ball on first down, we got to shut it down. And if they go to throw it, it's got to be an incomplete. And now here we go. The pendulum has swung in our favor, and now they're more predictable. That's actually, in my 6 years there, and this might sound as like a humble brag, but in my 6 years there, I think that was probably either the third or the fourth best third down number. We were in 2019, we were 3 conversions away from being the number one third down defense at any level of college football. Opponents were 23.2% that year. But it all starts with the ability to stop the run, the ability to play coverage that creates incompletions and tight windows, and a style of play when they do run the ball that creates negative plays, and that allows us to kind of pin our ears back and have a ton of fun on third down. But yeah, absolutely. That'll be the defensive mentality here. I'm going to still be running the defense here as the head coach. Mm-hmm. And that'll permeate throughout the team, right? I think our style offensively will be one that is physical, but it will be bred out of multiplicity and the ability to kind of attack you in different ways. But like, when it's fourth and game for 1 yard, like, the mentality's got to be like, we don't, like, we're running right there, and like, right. It, we know it, everybody in the stadium knows it, and we got to figure out how to pick it up, Mm-hmm.
Now, Coach, you get the announcement comes June of this year, so not a lot of time to get yourself into this recruiting cycle. But now we're into the 2025's recruiting cycle has really kicked up. So my question for you before we start is, what's the interview process like when you're going through as a head coach? Because obviously, I got to assume they assume football. Is there a lot of football conversation, or is it more, what are you going to do for the community? What's the grades going to look like? How are we going to improve the program in X, Y, and Z numbers?
Yeah, there's virtually no football talk, right? And I think, like, I talked to some people in the process before we started, and the common theme is like, the football success is the price of admission to be in this spot, right? Like, the football success, it gets you the ticket to even have the chance at this, right? So, which I completely get. But yeah, for me, in the process in general, they wanted to know, what your plans were for off the field development. They did want to know culturally, what are your plans for getting the program back to where it once was in terms of its national prominence, recruiting. The athletic director was very interested in what I would do recruiting wise that may have differed from how things went here recruiting, in the recent past, different ideas, how we engage student athletes in recruiting, what our visits look like, and that's something I've, again, been super fortunate to be around programs that, over my first 10 years have been super successful. And so, like, in a lot of ways, I kind of just get to pick from those programs on the things that really resonated with me that I loved, and then kind of make my own recipe for it here, knowing that kind of all those pieces worked at other stops, So yeah, the only time I really talked any football, I had the opportunity to sit down with 3 like kind of team leaders, like that were, not captains, but guys that were like team leaders. And that was like an hour. And that was really the time they threw a few questions out there about, would you come in running your defense, or would you bring somebody in, what's your vision for the op? They had some football questions, but on the large all day, it was more about, some of the recruiting stuff, some of the player development off the field, which I have a really like kind of strong opinion and a lot of conviction about, like my off the field program that we'll implement. And it's like a 4-year progressive program, that kind of starts more tailored towards making sure guys have the tools to be successful in college. And then it slowly blends into you having the tools to be successful after you graduate. Right. And so that there's a wide range of, for example, early on, things like time management and study skills seminars and sessions. And then later on, it's about, sitting down with somebody from one of our professors in our finance, from our school of finance, and doing seminars and workshops on budgeting and credit and, having, mock interview sessions and, networking opportunities. So, kind of that full cycle to get guys through the school process. But then after they've proven that they're, ready to, kind of leave the nest, now it's focusing on, okay, what are the tools to make you, a super marketable person professionally, but also give you the tools to be like a community leader, a great future husband, a father, those types of things. So,
right. Now, Coach, recruiting wise, I want to ask you, with your extended journey yourself to get to Rowan as a player, does that help you a little bit when you're talking to recruits on, maybe it's not for you right now, but don't look at all your options. Don't just, is that a conversation that you've had, and is it easier to have with players when have your experience?
I think that it certainly resonates more, right? Like, I think that I'm a real life example of somebody who had like ebbs and flows. It wasn't like a storybook, ideal path. I mean, I think the story ended up the way that I would like to have it ended up. Maybe a couple more wins here and there, right? But like at the end of the day, I think that there are guys that, whether they're drop down transfers or whether they're guys that are ineligible coming out of high school and they got to go to, community college first, and that's going to be the path to get them there. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I do have the ability to, have some very open and honest conversations, and again, come to them from a place of understanding and empathy where, other guys who had a more traditional path, maybe they have experience recruiting guys like that, but they don't have the experience of like living through those moments of like, man, like, do I want to continue to stay in shape and keep myself at a place that when it comes time to potentially play football, I'm still able to do so? Or am I good with letting it go, and just becoming a regular college student or even attending college at all? Right. And so for me, the big thing was like, I knew that school was never really something, it came easy to me in some regards, but like, it was not something that really held my attention in a lot of ways. Football was what allowed me to get my degree because it forced me to stay in school and take classes and do all that. And if I didn't coach football, I would have had opportunities, because of that degree that otherwise would not have been provided to me had I just chosen to be like, hey, I'm going to, stay back home and, just find a job right now, a 9 to 5, with no college degree at all. So
now, Coach, for those that don't know, can you tell us a little bit about Rowan and what the campus is like and what a prospective student might be coming to?
Sure. So I graduated here in 2012, and the undergrad enrollment at that time was just over 10,000. Flash forward a little more than a decade, and it's doubled in size. It is the biggest Division III football playing school in the country.
Okay.
So when you talk about potentially having when we get this thing cranked up to where I know we can on an annual basis, when you're talking about getting a Division I experience in terms of, people at games, or even the buzz around campus or nightlife with when the team is as successful as it will ultimately be. It's a way different dynamic than, being at a liberal arts school of, 1,500 or 2,000, so if you're not that guy that ends up getting that full scholarship, here you still are going to get to experience a lot of the things that come with, that environment, although, we're not giving you a full scholarship here. And we can get guys, financially, we can take care of guys very well, especially the in-state kids. But, I think major wise, we're a top 10 program in the country for radio, television, and film. It's a phenomenal program. We're actually the median, most affordable engineering school in the top 10 engineering schools nationally, in terms of public institutions, and so the out-of-state kids, we have things in the medical field. We have like nursing and vet and doctorate, PhD type stuff here. And then we also have, the engineering school, which Henry Rowan, who gave the money here, that was his thing. I mean, that building is unbelievable, state of the art. We have, it's kind of funny, some weird kind of newer majors, like for example, within our business school, some of the more cyber now like oriented business type things, our programs are really kind of leaning on, some of the global infrastructure type stuff. And then really at the end of the day, we still have that state school kind of, offering of things. We have the criminal justice paths and the teachers. We have a bunch of teachers in our program, and it's a tremendous school for that. It's actually a top 100 education grad program nationally, so for grad students out there that want to get their master's in education, the one in business is like the supply chain stuff. We're a top 10 it's actually a degree in supply chain management, which hadn't really even heard of. In terms of so it's more of a niche thing, but ultimately it's a top 10 program in that regard nationally as well. So yeah, there's a huge offering, amazing downtown area with a ton of bars, restaurants, things like that. And, just athletics as a whole, I mean, winning at an extremely high level. Our track team just finished third in the country. Our basketball team's been to back-to-back Sweet 16s. Our baseball team lost in the regionals a year ago there in the World Series. Our softball team just finished third nationally, lost in the national semifinals. Men's soccer has won the NJAC, 3 of the last however many years. Field hockey has been to the national Final Four 3 of the last 4 seasons. So, I mean, when you talk about just the overall success as a department, this is a place that cares about athletics, that's going to, care about the student athlete experience, because the proof is in the pudding, not only with our history as a program, but, with all these other programs currently succeeding at a really high level. So,
and then Coach, the question that I probably should have asked after I asked you the recruiting question, but other than the guy has to be able to play some football, because you wouldn't be recruiting him to join the football team if he couldn't play football, what are you looking for when you're bringing a player to campus and you're thinking about extending that offer to be a part of the team?
Yeah, this is something that kind of has always been something that any of the places that I've worked, it's kind of been they've been like the non-negotiables. And I think it really is a recipe for success. Starting out with like, the guy has to have a burning desire to play college football, right? Like, he can't be looking at us, and maybe a couple other NJACs or Centennials or whatever, but he's also looking at, Rutgers and Syracuse and, Boston College just to go to school. Like,
right.
I'm not interested in those guys. Like, if they're getting football interest from higher level schools, even better. Like those tweener borderline guys are obviously the guys that we're really, attacking at the end of the day in the recruiting cycle. But we want guys that are all in on football. It's really important. It's a part of their college experience that really matters to them. They're set on that, because if they're not that way, the first stroke of adversity that they face, a lot of times the guys that aren't all in are going to just bag it. Right. So that's not something we really want. Guys that have a burning desire to get a great education, when you talk about, especially in this climate nowadays, in terms of like cost benefit analysis, of what is your degree doing for you and what was the financial commitment to that. I love where we are financially. I think our people across the street, from what I've seen in the very short period of time I've been here, they do a phenomenal job of giving competitive packages that really allow people to see the value in coming here in terms of their return on investment, which I think is really important. And then guys that really want to be coached hard, I think that guys that want to be coached at a higher level, they want to be coached with extreme detail. They want to be held to a standard of, we're always going to be striving to be better. There's always something to correct. Our level of detail and how we practice, our level of competition and how we practice, how we prepare, whether it's film study, whether it's off-season workouts, the detail that goes into those, whether it's how we carry ourselves in our walkthroughs. I mean, we're going to be very high level in a lot of things that we do. Places that are, a Division I experience from a football perspective on how we're going to teach, how we're going to treat them, those types of things. And I've been around those places, and I can say that, wholeheartedly, that, the experience they're going to get from that perspective is going to be, top of the line.
Now, Coach, have you started your countdown on how long it is till Stevenson?
I have not. I know it's 14 days till report day. I'm trying to one step at a time here. It's funny. So I've done this thing over the last kind of week and a half because, my official start date was July 8th. Right. So I know that they announced it on like June 26th or whatever, but I didn't get a laptop until like July 12th. Right. So, I mean, like I didn't have access to an email until like July 14th or something. Right. So it's been a lot in a short period of time. And so, but also I didn't get the real opportunity that most coaches get of like addressing your team, when you get announced as that guy. So I didn't want to come into camp and that be the first time that I had the opportunity to do that, So I went out and I kind of, pinned our roster and then created 3 locations where I was going to come. I talked to high school coaches in that area who I have relationships with, and we essentially like use their auditorium or whatever, where I could have essentially like regional team meetings where I held like, hey, here are the expectations. Here's my vision. Here's what I'm thinking. And then I follow those up with alumni socials in those same areas those evenings. So bringing back some of the alums, some guys I know, some guys I didn't know, right? I'm honored. I'm the first alumni who's the head coach of this program and program history, so getting that honor, but being able to kind of bring some guys back into the fold who have a ton of pride in the program. And we're, brothers at the end of the day, having shared that same experience and worn the same jersey. But the coach up in North Jersey, when I was trying to figure out how to get this meeting done, he was like, man, like it's been a sprint for you. It has to have been like, drinking water out of a fire hose. And I said, I think that would be more preferable at this point in time than what I've done so far. And I've always followed it up. I've made that joke, but I've always followed it up with, I've enjoyed every single second of it.
Right.
It just has been, I mean, the timetable is undoubtedly tight, having to make a few staff hires on top of kind of integrating and getting my feet settled, moving from central Pennsylvania, here, moving my, my 9-month-old daughter and my family here, that obviously took a little bit of, time and effort and energy as well. So it has certainly been a lot, but I've enjoyed every second of it, doing things like this, talking about the program that I played in, that gave so much to me. And, just really excited about the future, but it certainly has been a tight summer. So as of now, just like I told my staff today in our staff meeting, we got to be one step ahead. We got to be one day ahead of the players in camp. That's it. Right. So we're installing a new scheme, all that. We don't need to know the whole thing right now. We got to be one day ahead of where we're installing those guys. And so I don't know how many days it is till that September 5th Thursday night right now, but I do know that it's 2 weeks to the day when our players get to campus, and I'm trying to just take it one step at a time. So,
And Coach, do you feel the last question about Rowan, and then we'll get into some other things. Do you feel a little bit more pressure as an alumni, as the first alumni to take over this program? Is there a little bit, maybe not pressure, but a chip on your shoulder of like, I know where this program can be. I know where it was. I know where we can get it back to. Let's get to work. Is that kind of to wrap up what this off season has been for you?
You know, when I got offered the job, I was actually lucky enough to be at home. It was like I was back right outside of Atlantic City. I was around my family, and I had been anticipating whether I was going to get the job or not. I've been anticipating a phone call from the AD in this like 48-hour window, and I got the call at like 8 a.m. or 8:30 in the morning where he would offer me the job, and it was an unbelievable day. Like I won't forget that for a very long time, maybe ever. Like my mom, my dad, my stepdad, my siblings, you know, my new family that I'm building now, and I had that like 15 minutes or 20 minutes of just like, you know, a lot of overwhelming emotions. And then it was just like, all right, well, now it's time to get to work, you know,
Right.
like, you know, like, and, you know, I don't know if it's additional pressure because I'm an alum. But I've told people like pressure is a privilege, and the expectations in this program are extremely high from the alumni base.
Mm-hmm.
And I welcome that. I wouldn't have wanted the job if it wasn't at a place that had extremely high expectations. Like
Right.
I had zero interest in I had zero interest in just being a head coach to be a head coach. I had never applied for any other head coaching job, you know, in my entire tenure. And there had been, you know, a dozen, maybe 2 dozen that had opened up in the region over the time that I've been in DC at Susquehanna.
Mm-hmm.
This was the head job that I wanted for a multitude of reasons. Coming back home, you know, coming back to the region I grew up, coming back to the program that gave so much to me, you know, created so many lifelong friends and memories. But at the end of the day, like one of the most storied programs in Division III football, and a place that I know should be and will be, you know, consistently a team that people, you know, should worry about if we're on your schedule moving forward. And I welcome those expectations. I welcome opponents, you know, feeling like that way about us on the schedule, you know, and I do welcome right now some of the eye rolls or chuckles that my expectations are what they are, you know, from a national perspective, because the standard is the standard at this place. And, you know, the expectations are that we're competing for conference championships and looking to make a run in the postseason. And just because of the short timetable or the change in staff, those expectations haven't changed. So
Now, Coach, let's talk about some of the things that have come up along with you this year. You got your job. You got the job in June, start in July. In April of this year, the NCAA and the committees decided we're getting an expansion to the playoff system this year, and Division III up to 18 iPads on the sidelines. The first question I have for you is, was it time for the expansion from 32 to 40? Does that work for you? I've had some coaches on that they lean, it's great that we're going to get more teams in, but there's 29, 30 AQs out there. If you get an AQ, you're not going to worry about them at large bids. So where do you fall with that?
I think if Division III wants to stay in the model of every conference gets an automatic bid, then this was a no-brainer. You know, right. I think that in 2019, we were one of the best football teams in the country at Susquehanna. I have no doubt that we would have made a deep run, right? We were the last team out. The last team in was North Central, who ended up winning the whole thing, right? When you're in a world that you could have replaced the national champions, and we, in some regard, had a better resume literally until the selection night, when I think Washington University snuck into their regional rankings, which gave North Central a regionally ranked win. And again, like they ended up following through and doing it all. And so that was the right choice. But ultimately, like, we got left out. Our only loss was a overtime 3-point loss on the road to Muhlenberg, who ended up going to the Final Four that year and losing at Mountain Union. And, and you're seeing these teams lose by 50, 60 points in the first round. And so, yeah, I absolutely believe that if you were going to keep the model of everybody in every conference, regardless of record, regardless of strength of team, gets an automatic bid, then they had to expand the playoff model, and for the people that want to talk about the extra games and cost and all that, a lot, for 80% of teams that make the playoffs, or let's call it 70% of teams that make the playoffs, like, that's never going to affect you ever.
No.
Right? Like, at the end of the day, we're talking about 2 teams a year that got to play an additional game. I'm sure those athletic departments are more than happy to figure out how to juggle around some finances to make that happen, whatever the additional cost of having those guys on campus is, while
for the chance at the hardware. Yeah.
I mean, so it was always kind of a little bit of a laughable,
right,
kind of argument. Like, what about the extra games? Like, your conference hasn't won a postseason game in 9 years. You're worried about the extra week in the postseason? Like,
and the one that didn't get me, the thing that I didn't understand is there's what, 200, are we at 227 somewhere, 227, 226, somewhere in that?
I think it's even more than that now. Yeah.
Or 240 something. Yeah. I think maybe it is.
Yeah. 243 or 244. Yeah.
Percentage wise, Division III football.
It's always been off. It's always been off.
What are we talking? 20% maybe of teams in all of Division III get into the dance? That didn't make sense to me.
And at the end of the day, they do have like what are supposed to be like the percentage standards of like representation, and Division III football has been off for quite some time now, and I think it was good. They rectified it. Will it be perfect? Like, no, like the 41st team now is going to be pissed off they don't get in, but
right.
But I will say, I would imagine, and I'll just predict this ahead of time, the 41st team is probably going to be like a 3-loss team, right? And so not only did you not, like, when you were in situations where, Hardin Simmons loses their only game to Mary Hardin Baylor, or John Carroll loses their only game to Mount Union, or
Muhlenberg last year.
Yeah, or Johns Hopkins in 2022, their only loss was to us. In our last year in the Centennial, and they don't get in the playoffs. Like, that's a travesty, and
right.
So those teams deserve to be in the playoffs, and they'd make noise in the playoffs in most cases. And because of the setup, they couldn't get in. Now,
right.
Those teams are a shoo-in if they handle business outside of that one game. Those teams are in automatically now. So I'm all for it.
When I know, just to wrap this part up, I know last year's big one was, I think Linfield was the one that everybody was Linfield and St. John's, I think, were the 2 schools. I heard a lot of people and saw a lot of people on Twitter that those were 2 schools that everybody expected was going to get in. So moving from the expansion of the playoffs, now up to 18 iPads on the sidelines. Is Rowan hired? Are you guys hiring 18 people, or are we gonna do this in a smaller rollout way? How do you feel about the jumping into it this year, and what does that mean for the future of Division III when it comes to maybe replays and other things that could be brought in with iPads being available on the sideline?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I actually thought that the helmet communication probably had a higher likelihood to pass sooner than iPads did. Like the helmet communications occurring at the highest level, starting this season. But that seemed like an obvious one to me. I think that I wasn't really, if I had the vote, I would have said no to the iPads. I believe, like, especially, as a defensive coach, I'm somebody who, like, I want you to have to see what we did on Sunday, like in the film room. Like, I have zero interest in you being able to go right to the sideline. And, I think it was a little bit of like a skill gap. Like, if you had staff that could diagnose and players that could relay information properly on what they were seeing, and then you can make that adjustment. I think that was a skill gap, that existed on the sideline in adjustments on in-game play. And now, sure, there's still going to be adjustments to that cat and mouse game, but it's just a different type now because you're going to have every angle of everything and, and all that. So we'll still, I think that, we're going to have it. My ideal situation here is going to be a couple iPads up top and then probably 2 on each side of the ball down bottom. So maybe like 6 iPads is what we're kind of landing on. I don't know who's possibly using the max 18. I'd love to know if you've talked to somebody who's using all 18 at this point.
Not one coach has given me we're hiring 18 people. I had 17 lined up for North Central, but Coach Spencer said, I don't think we need that. So,
but yeah, I think that it'll be interesting. I think that this year specifically, the people who will have reps at it in camp and maybe figure out a way to use it even in practice during the week and like kind of master, how they want to operate with that and what their communication is going to be like and how to, hey, what's important for us to see and how we're going to operate on the sideline and who we're showing that to and the progression of how that all is going to go down. I think whoever figures that out obviously has a little bit of an advantage here early, but, while everybody kind of settles into the general landscape of using them, there's obviously going to be people who don't use them. And I think that that's a huge disadvantage, obviously, and I do think that, leagues that talked about not using them for stuff like league play because of some of the schools in the league saying that they couldn't afford them or didn't want to use them. I think you're doing a huge disservice to that league when it comes to playing postseason and all that, because your representative now is going to have, exorbitantly less reps at this thing now. And so are they really going to be able to represent your conference to the best of their ability? Because I do believe it's going to make a big impact in terms of the ability to make in-game adjustments quickly if you're efficient at using it. So,
right. And then, Coach, do you think that another predict of the future, do you think that we get replay out of this? Is that what the next step would likely be with iPads being on the sideline?
I'd be shocked, and I don't know if this is something that they've even discussed. I think my summers had a little bit too much excitement to even go down this road, but like I wouldn't be surprised if part of like the criteria to be a host team moving forward is partially dependent upon the ability to handle something like replay, right? As from an angles perspective, from having lifts, from having, things that you're going to have those angles. And, to be honest, like I wouldn't be shocked if sooner than later, like it was all the way to the Final Four before you had, challenges and replay and stuff. I wouldn't be shocked if it started with postseason play entirely. And then I do believe that there's probably going to be some conferences as early as this year that are going to institute instant replay in season. So, I mean, I know that the company that we're going with specifically for the service, floated the idea of if the entire league went in that they would include replay for free. And then obviously you guys got to talk to the referee crews that are affiliated with your leagues on what they're feeling and how they want to operate in that way. And then obviously get that into your conference football bylaws and all that. But, I think that obviously is a huge positive out of it. Like as much as maybe I don't necessarily want the iPads, I think that the ability to make sure we get critical calls right in games.
Right.
Even things like targetings where like we'd have to wait until halftime or like in between games to see if like that was the right call or not. Like a guy wrongfully gets ejected from like his senior day game and never gets that day back. Like now at least that would give us the ability to like rectify those things on the spot and be as accurate as possible with like critical calls in football games.
And then, Coach, before we get to the 5 questions I told you about before we went on camera, the final question for this part is, what's the significance of Division III to you? And you've spent some time in Division III, so
Yeah. That's always a funny question to ask me, because I spend a lot of time, I think, fighting against some of the stigmas that come with being a Division III program. I do believe, obviously, our guys to some degree have, more free time in the summer, and, and not as intensive of an off-season program requirement wise, but I do probably believe that if you're talking to a coach of one of the perennial top 5-10 teams in the country, from a workload perspective, there probably isn't even things that, at the Division I level, it may be required, but at the Division III level, those programs and the standards within those programs, like those captains are going to be holding workouts. Those leaders are going to be getting on the field and having them do drill work. Like, so that level is kind of interesting to me. I think it's just an opportunity for guys that, especially in today's day and age, with the portal and with 5th years, and, as we're in this specific era, like giving guys an opportunity to continue playing the sport they love while also getting a great education, and there are a lot of stigmas around, like, hey, if you're a Division III athlete, it's pay to play, or it's that type of stuff. And the places I've been, that couldn't be further from the truth. And listen, you alluded to the number earlier, and I say to people all the time, like, yeah, if you watch the 244th and 247th school play against each other,
it's not good.
It's not good football. But, like, at the end of the day, like, go watch 2 top 25 teams square off in a game and tell me that those aren't quality athletes, playing quality football, quality coaching staffs, and quality game day, in a lot of regard, quality game day experience, quality facilities, right? And have the opportunity to get a ton of money in, merit-based aid and stackable grant and all that, to where, in some regard, and I deal with this here and I've dealt with it at Susquehanna and everywhere, like, could be more affordable out of pocket than, potentially a higher level institution. And the return on investment based on the education of the places I've been should make that a no-brainer in terms of the decision, because, this place and this place cost the same. The outcomes of coming from our place are drastically greater, but the only difference is you can say you're a Division II player instead of a Division III player. Like, okay, so trying to break down some of those barriers and some of those stigmas about what it means to be a high-level Division III athlete, I think, are important to talk about as well. And I embrace the D3, mindset in a lot of regards, of guys being able to do different things on campus and guys being able to be a part of different things. But, we want guys in our program and the places that I've been, like, we want guys that are obsessed with football. Like, we want guys that, like, bleed the game, and yeah, there's going to be some time for that other stuff due to some hours restrictions and all that. But, like, we want guys that want that higher level experience. And they see the value in our place being a great alternative for them, not, hey, this is a club sport, I guess I'll keep playing, like, let's sign up. Like, that's not how I view this thing at all. So,
no. All right, Coach, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Man, the first thing that comes to my head is South Africa. How well you know me would determine kind of why I feel that way. The African wild dog is like my spirit animal. It's our culture. It's always been our culture. Defensively at Susquehanna, it's something I'm fascinated with, the animal in general. If I was living in the States, I'd have to say, like, my brother lived in Santa Barbara, California for a while. I loved Santa Barbara. I love Austin, Texas. just to name a couple places. But yeah, I would say South Africa would probably be very high on that list for me.
What's the most important lesson you've learned over your career thus far?
As a coach. Be demanding, not demeaning.
Okay.
I learned that from Mike Donnelly, and that kind of is, permeated through my career. Like, it's okay to tell a guy he's a screw up, that he screwed up. It's not okay to tell him he's a screw up, right? Like, having a little bit of a differentiator. I was actually talking with this about my staff today. One of my buddies, who's the O-line coach at Princeton, Brandon Cuevas, when he had the minority fellowship with the Falcons down in Atlanta. Even how they talk to their players there, it's nuanced, but it makes a ton of sense to me. Like, when a guy at a position, let's say you play tight end, like if he made a mistake on who he blocked or, how deep his route was, they would say like, hey, tight end, like we got to have this block, or hey, tight end, your footwork was bad. But like, if it was something to be celebrated, whether it was like effort or a big time play or whatever, they would say, hey, Ruley, awesome play, right? And so like, because when you're correcting people, you are correcting everybody in your program that plays that position.
Right.
And it also doesn't feel like a personal attack, versus when somebody does something that you want to celebrate, you allow them to have their flowers, right? So just a little bit of perspective there, and it's a slight change in language, but I think it goes a long way.
If you weren't coaching, what would you be doing?
I wasn't coaching, what I'd be doing. I mean, I think from a internal belief system perspective, I'd probably be doing something with inner city youth. I'd probably be doing something, whether it was social work or being a teacher at an inner city school. I actually, part of the story about coming to Rowan that I didn't tell you was coming out of high school. I had sat down with recruiters in the Navy, and I was going to join the Navy, and then I made the decision to go to Ohio University instead. So military was always something that kind of drew me a little bit, like having that feeling of like service to the country, and being a protector and those types of things have always been something that have been like kind of strong values in me. But it'd probably be something serving people, serving young men, serving underserved communities, that type of stuff.
Coach, what's the best compliment you've ever gotten?
Nice beard.
Nice beard.
Yeah. One of the guys I played with in college, he always, when we got done playing, and I think it might have been while we were still in school, but, he always said like, regardless, like he could never tell publicly, in our settings, whether or not like I was having a bad day, but I always like elevated the mood in the room that I was in. Right. And I never really viewed it that way, but, if I do step back, I always do try to feel like, hey, like there's very few things in this world that you really should be complaining about. And a lot of times complaining is a habit. Mm-hmm. And it's like eating like junk food. Like it feels good in the moment, but like in the grand scheme of things, like it's not productive. Right. And right. So, I think that for me, it's always been like having a, being able to crack jokes and have levity and, but also just kind of have a positive attitude about what's going on or how we're going to be able to, hey, okay, that's the problem, but like, let's be solution focused, those types of things. And yeah, I think for me, it's just always been about like having a positive attitude and being upbeat. That's something I've prided myself in, but that was probably the best compliment I've gotten for sure.
And then the other side of compliments, and you and I talked about this off camera as well. I don't know if we want to call it the worst insult, if we want to call it the best. I might have to change that, how we phrase it, but what's the best, worst insult you've ever gotten, I guess?
Man. I try not to listen to those. So that's like that's a tough one. My first ever convention, I'm going to tell you this story while I'm trying to think in the back of my head, but the first ever national coaches convention I went to, I sat in on a talk with Bob Stoops, saying that in, his 20 or whatever years at Oklahoma, he never received a negative email. Like he would have his secretary literally like filter his emails, and he would only get like the positive. Emails.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like when it comes to like negative stuff, I mean, I've had a lot of stuff from a coaching perspective, just about, like how, brash or outspoken, like that type of stuff. I tell our guys in recruiting, like the people who know me best, those people know that what my heart is, and they know, what people that I care about mean to me and the lengths that I would go for them. Right. I have enough friends, like for me, like people, opponents, rivals, whatever, like them having a perception of me because of, how I move on social media, or how how I'm fired up on Saturdays during games, or, how I conduct myself being energetic in pregame might not be to their liking, or the fact that we have a fur turnover coat that my defensive guys, wear when we get a turnover, like they might not like that type of stuff. And that might be, they feel like it's a reflection of me. But yeah, I know it's a cop out, but I really don't, I don't really listen to a ton of the, somebody kind of making a backhanded compliment about like my beard not being like full, like that probably offend me more than anything like that I could possibly, that somebody could possibly say to me. So
I understand that there's no joking when it comes to people's beards.
Listen, I tell people all the time, like this is what I got right here. Like, this is it. Like at the end of the day, my dad gave me a lot of great things. Hair genetics was not one of them. And so my ability to really take a ton of pride in what I can do from the jawline down, that's something that, means I do take a ton of pride in, because that's what I can control, right? Like try to get people's eyes down from the top of my head to my face.
Coach, I'm doing everything I can to keep, I haven't got a haircut in a year. I'm letting it all grow.
Hold on.
I'm just, until it goes. Now, when it goes, it's got to, we'll just keep this here, but I'm going to keep as much of it up here as I can. So the last question I've asked every coach that we've had on the show, was there a question that you were expecting me to ask you? And if so, how would you have answered it?
So I knew you did ask a ton of like favorite type stuff, and the one question I was prepared for, and it is a little bit of like a funny answer, because I heard somebody ask this and they gave the perfect answer, and I like put it in the back of my head, like if I ever get asked this question, that's the answer I'm going to go with. Is somebody saying, what is your favorite sandwich? And the answer's got to be ice cream.
I can go with it.
Listen, my family has we own a sub shop, like our cheesesteaks are world class, but like, I mean, a classic ice cream sandwich on a hot day. I mean, I don't really know how much better you can get than that, So
now I have to share with you if you could, or what would you be doing if you weren't coaching? I had a coach a couple episodes ago, from Wisconsin, who told me that him and his brother have looked very deep into this, and they would be garlic farmers. There's a lot of money in garlic. Once you grow it, it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and all you got to do is harvest it and sell. I mean, he went in depth on that. So some of the answers that we've gotten, there's interesting alternative paths, I guess, that I never thought a football coach may have. So
I gotta tell you, like, it's so funny. Pretty early on here, like I've had buddies that are in the business world that, when I was 25 sleeping on couches, they were making money hand over fist, and always offering me jobs at every wedding I can make and all that type of stuff. And I'm like, dude, you think that I would have been doing this for even 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah.
Doing what I've been doing, if like I didn't really love this thing? Like, if you think that if money was the primary motivator, that like I'd still be doing what I'm doing right now, right? So I never really had a plan B, like as soon as I got into this thing, like it was like, hey, as long as somebody's willing to let me do this for a living, like,
Yeah.
I figured out how to do it with no money, so no, it's not going to be ever a financial issue. So at the end of the day, like, we're going to figure out how to do it. And I love it. And, really grateful that, I have this opportunity to, to do this as a calling and a vocation. It's amazing. So,
well, Coach, I can't think of a better way to end our segment here than with that. So for those of you sticking around, I believe we have overtime coming up. This has been the new head football coach at Rowan University, Coach Pat Ruley, and we will be right back.
Peter Parisi, the senior kicker, the lefty winds up and boots it deep. Here's Wilson firing, and it's picked off. And to the end zone goes Eric Bryant for the pick six. Nani drops back. He's got a lot of time to throw. Looks for the end zone, and it's caught.
The middle, and that's McCullough. McCullough gets the run, and he's going to take it back all the way. His second rusher tonight is going to get to the end zone. Cross, make it 13-37. Set back, he's going to set downfield, and wide open for the reception. And going up the down the south line, and he's going to score.
Dip to Farrah, up the middle, he does, he's got daylight. Farrah to the 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown! James Farrah, have a day! Here to Coach Richard Lacker Stadium in Glassboro, New Jersey, on the site of Rowan University. Rowan University football here on homecoming Saturday.
Got first and goal of the 6.
20-yard completion. First and goal. Bachula with the carry, lowers his head. Bachula is in. Touchdown, Profs.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Dingo Talk. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. For more info and to contact the show, you can find us on Twitter @DingoTalk.